Hey, now that we can build an application using standalone components, we don't need Angular modules, also called NgModules. But then, where do we put our routes? Let's look at how to do routing, including lazy loading, without an NgModule. When using NgModules, we add the routes to our NgModule imports array. In the app module, we define router module for route for our primary application routes. In this example, we define a route to our welcome page, and if the user accesses our site without a route, it redirects to that welcome page. We also have a wildcard route, denoted with 2 asterisks, to catch any invalid route. We could display an error page, but in this example, any unrecognized route is redirected to the welcome page. If you have an application of any size, you may also have feature modules with child routes. In this example, we have a product module for our product feature routes. Here we see the feature routes passed into router module for child. Let's run the application to see the routes in action. Here is our welcome page. If we remove the welcome part of the URL, it redirects to the welcome route. And if we change the URL to something else, like Acme, it again redirects to the welcome route. When we click on Product List, it navigates to the Products route. Clicking on a specific product navigates to the Products route with a number indicating the ID of the product to display. Clicking back returns us to the main Products route. Let's go back to the code. If we want to build an application without an app module, we first migrate our components to Standalone. We did that in an earlier video. See the link to that video in the upper right corner now, or in this video's notes. The Angular Standalone migration schematic moved our routes to the configuration options as part of our application bootstrapping in main.ts. If we don't want to use the migration tool, we can cut the routes from the app module and paste them here ourselves. We use bootstrapApplication to start up our application with the standalone app component. We then provide a set of configuration options. I have another video that talks more about this bootstrapping process with Standalone. Check it out for more information on bootstrapping. In this video, we focus on routing. As part of the Bootstrap providers array, we include provideRouter and pass in our array of routes. We could do the same thing with our feature child routes. I'll open the product feature module to the side and close Explorer for more space. Our products route navigates to the product list component, and the products route with an ID parameter routes to the product detail component. The Angular Standalone migration schematic did not delete this NgModule because it contains our feature routes. We could cut them from our feature module and paste them into main.ts in the array passed into provideRouter. We'd insert them above the empty and wildcard routes. Notice that our main TS now needs to import each of our product components and our guard. That means that all of these components and the guard will be loaded when the application starts up. That could slow down our loading process and delay the time before the user sees our first page. We don't want that. I'll undo that change to main.ts and close the product module. Let's instead put the feature child routes in their own file. In the products folder, I'll create a new file and name it product.routes.ts. In this file, I'll export a constant called product_routes. By convention, constants in JavaScript and TypeScript are all uppercase, with words separated by an underscore. The type of this constant is routes. We import routes from @Angular/router. Routes is an array of route objects. Then we set this constant to the array containing our product routes, which I still have in my paste buffer. And we import each of the components and our guard. Let's move this file to the side and close Explorer. Now we could use this constant in the Bootstrap configuration as part of provideRouter, but that has the same problem. We still need to import this file, which imports each of our components and our guard at startup. Let's lazy load these feature child routes instead. I'll again undo this change. To minimize the amount of code that is loaded when the application begins, let's lazy load our feature child routes. That way our product features won't be loaded until they're needed. I'll make this a bit wider. We use loadChildren to load all of the feature child routes. We define a path, which in this example is products. Then set the loadChildren property to an arrow function. We dynamically import our product routes. Notice how VS Code helps us find the route file. When the routes are successfully loaded, then we get access to the imported route definition file, and we use that reference to pull in those routes using our constant. Now, when the user accesses the product's path, only then does it load all of the routes defined in product routes. But wait a minute. Now that we've specified the product's path here, the code will look for products/products and products/products/ID. We need to remove the products part of the path here. The first path becomes an empty string, so if the route is products, this code lazy loads the product routes. If there isn't anything on the route after the products, it routes to the product list component. Removing products, the second path is the ID parameter. If there is a value after products, it uses it as an ID and routes to the product detail component. Let's see if our new routes work. Here is our welcome page. Clicking Product List displays our product list component, and clicking on a product displays the detail for that product. Clicking back returns to the product list page. It works. Going back to the code, we now have our product child routes lazy loaded only when they're needed. But this syntax only works if all routed components are standalone. If any of the components are not standalone, the route must be declared in an NgModule instead. Now, what if we want to lazy load our standalone components directly without defining child routes? We do that with loadComponent. Let's create a new component we can lazy load. I'll use the Angular CLI to create an About component that tells the user about the application. Open the terminal window, add a command prompt, and type ng for Angular CLI, G for generate, C for component, about for the name of the component, --standalone. And the Angular CLI creates a standalone About component. Close the terminal. Let's open Explorer and take a look. In the new About folder is our About component. Because we used the --standalone flag, the Angular CLI created it as a standalone component. In the App component, let's define a menu option for this new About component. I'll copy and paste the list item for the product list option. Change /products to /about for the route, and set the text from product list to about. Then in main.ts, we'll add a path to the About route. But we don't want to import the About component here. This option won't be used much, so we don't want to load it on startup. Since this component is standalone, we can lazy load it. I'll reformat, delete the component property, and instead set loadComponent to an arrow function. We dynamically import the component. Notice again how VS Code helps us here. When the import is successful, we get a reference to the component file and load the component. Now this component won't load until the user accesses the About route. It's important to note that loadComponent only works with standalone components. Let's bring up the app. Here is our About option. And the default UI displays About works, so we've successfully lazy loaded our About component. Feel free to improve the HTML for this component as desired. Let's go back to the code. Since all of our components are standalone and all of our routes are now here, we no longer need any routes in our NgModules. So we can delete product.module.ts. Yes. In main.ts, we remove the reference to product module from the import providers from. And scrolling up, we remove the import statement. Bringing up the app one more time. And it works without an NgModule. Yay! To create an application without Angular modules called NgModules, we add the list of routes to the Bootstrap application configuration. In the providers array, we specify provideRouter and pass in our routes. To lazy load a set of child routes, use loadChildren. To lazy load an individual component, use loadComponent. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.